As she gazed out of the window at the rocky landscape flashing by in the car's lights, Brooke wondered whether her troubled relationship with Ben would ever recover. It had started so blissfully, only to crash and burn so senselessly just when it was beginning to look as though it could last forever. The crash had come in September. The autumn months had been a forlorn, empty time, drowning herself in her work. The Christmas holiday without him had been almost unbearably miserable. Then, slowly, over the last couple of months had dawned the prospect of a possible reconciliation. The phone conversations between her home in London and his in France were growing longer and more frequent. Sometimes he even called her. It was still fragile, though, still just a tiny candle flame that might be snuffed out at any time. There were moments when Brooke thought he was holding something back from her, times when she could sense the tension between them, ready to flare up all over again. In their separate ways, they'd both been equally to blame for the split. "What a couple of hotheads we are," she thought wryly to herself as she recalled the awful quarrel that had bust them apart. The worst thing was that, in the end, it had all been about nothing. Just a stupid, horrible misunderstanding. "The chopper will pick us up at the house and take us over to Derry Airport first thing in the morning," Sam was saying to her employer. "We arrive at Gatwick just after 10:30, then on to Malaga in plenty of time to make your meeting with Cabeza." Forsyth pursed his lips and gave a grunt of assent. Drifting momentarily back into the present, Brooke noticed the way he kept fingering the handle of the attaché case secured to his wrist by a steel cuff and a slim chain, and she briefly wondered what was inside that must be so valuable, but her curiosity waned rapidly as she turned back towards the dark window and resumed her own private thoughts. A flash of white light caught Brooke's eye. The road behind was no longer empty. The bright headlights of a car were coming up fast. No, she thought, twisting round to peer out of the rear window. Not a car, but a van of some kind. Going somewhere in a real hurry, too. Forsyth glanced back as the van's main beam headlights loomed close enough to fill the inside of the Jaguar with their glare. "Just some idiot," he said nonchalantly. "Pull in a little and let him past, will you, Wally?" Wally shook his head in exasperation, then flipped on his indicator, slowed to just over 30 and steered towards the side of the narrow road to let the van by. The large vehicle noisily overtook them, a plain white Renault Master panel van, scuffed and spattered with road dirt, then cut in tightly at an angle and screeched to a halt, blocking the road. Wally hit the brakes and the rear passengers were thrown forwards, except for Brooke, who'd braced herself against the front passenger seat a fraction of a second before the emergency stop. Sam let out a little cry as her netbook went flying. "What the hell?" Forsyth shouted. "Fucking arsehole!" Wally thrust the automatic gearbox into park and left the engine running as he climbed out of the car. "What's your game, you bloody prick?" he yelled, slamming his door shut and storming up to the stationary van. The Renault Master's doors burst open simultaneously. Wally stopped dead in his tracks and went quiet as two men jumped out and strode aggressively towards him. They were both wearing black balaclavas, and not because of the biting February wind. Brooke's blood turned icy at the sight of the weapons in the men's hands. Identical compact submachine guns, black and brutal with long tubular sound moderators attached to their muzzles. She'd seen weapons like those before. So had Wally Lander, once upon a time, but his 9 years out of the army had blunted his senses and all he could do was gape. "Oh my God!" Sam gasped. Forsyth stared in speechless horror, clutching his attaché case. Neither of the masked men spoke a word. Instead, almost casually, they turned their weapons towards Wally and opened fire. From inside the car, the silenced gunfire seemed like no more than a rapid string of muffled thumps. Wally's legs folded under him, then he collapsed lifelessly at the roadside. His blood was bright in the beams of the Jaguar's headlights. Sam screamed in panic and clung onto Forsyth. "What do they want with us, Roger? Oh, Jesus, they're going to kill us." Brooke hesitated, but for no more than a second before she launched herself at the gap between the front seats and scrambled in behind the wheel. She wrenched the stick into drive, stamped the heel of her Italian designer party shoe on the gas, and held it all the way down. The Jaguar took off with a roar and a rasp of tyres. Clenching the wheel, Brooke had no choice but to drive grimly over Wally's dead body with a sickening bump. The masked men hurled themselves out of the way. There was a jarring impact as the car slammed into the angled side of the van. A rump